Hello everyone, welcome to Writing Quest. In this video, we are going to be talking with Author Quest. Ayden was the one of the original founders of Writing Quest, and then we ended up splitting into two channels, just mostly for time-based reasons. It was just getting hard to record together, and so we thought, let's do this separately together. And
then we told ourselves that, we'll record videos together off and on here and there, and I think this is like the third one we've done since we split.
Maybe. Yeah. So
something like that.
How's it going?
It's going very well. Still writing. I think the last time we recorded, I was talking about getting through my rough draft, and I'm sadly still in that spot, still trying to get through my rough draft of my book. So I would say not too much has changed there, but actually a lot has changed there. The story's changing, Brenden. The story's changing.
That's good.
But anyway.
So let's just jump into it. So you have focused your channel primarily around the topic of archetypes. So it's about writing, but it's also about different types of archetypes, character archetypes, villains, setting archetypes. You even have one, I think, on like race archetypes and culture archetypes, I think.
Yeah.
So you've been very successful. You actually, your channel really took off a lot faster than the original Writing Quest channel did, because I think you hit a really interesting niche. And so why did you pick archetypes, and like where did that all come from for you?
Well, for me, it was essentially I was like, what are the fundamentals of storytelling? And I told myself I need to learn two things specifically. I need to know how to write good prose, a good sentence. I think that's what I originally said. I was like, I need to know how to write a good sentence, right? And then the other one was I need to know how to tell a good story. Like if I can't tell a good story at sitting around a campfire, then I'm not going to be able to write a good book. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I started asking myself, what are the fundamentals of story? What are the fundamentals of all that? And I was watching, I've been on a huge Brandon Sanderson kick for the last year, as just
like the whole reading world has been.
Like the whole reading world has. And I was watching his lectures online, and he briefly just talked about archetypes at one point, and I was like, whoa, and it kind of blew my mind, and I just kind of ran with it, and it really stuck in my brain, and me making those videos those are the actual things that I use and that I have used in the current story that I'm writing, and it just hit me that I can write the story before I even write down all the details. And I know that's basically outlining, but
archetypes provides a way to kind of use something that's standard and then convert it to your own needs.
Right. So, and I've talked about this on my channel before, but nothing is new. There are no new stories, right? There's new ways of telling stories, but anything you read, anything you write, even the new, we were just talking about the Rippaverse and these independent creators that are now starting to pop up. All those stories are going to be well-known stories. They're just going to be told with new details and that kind of thing.
Different characters, different like a
names,
hero's
different
a hero.
spins. Yeah, here's a hero. A child who feels like a disappointment and trying to make it up to their parent and trying to prove themselves to their parent. That is a core human story.
Yeah.
Right. Or let's say a great example that I like to use is a bartender. Right. A very specific kind of bartender is a very specific kind of character, and even if you change the details, you change how tall they are, you change how they speak, you change. This is a bartender that hates beer, but he's a bartender. There's still a thread with all bartenders that they are the character that is sitting and listening and has an opportunity to be around but not involved.
Yeah.
You know? And I think that's just...
Or
or
they're the character that knows all of the secrets of town, or they know, like...
Right.
You know, so like actually this one project I'm working on, which I'm not even going to say hardly anything about it because I'm so excited, but I don't want to like falsely announce anything.
Don't say it, Brenden.
But in this particular version of it, I'm toying with kind of making the main character a bartender type person. Mm-hmm. So they're the hero of the story, but they're also like the bartender that everyone tells all their crap to, and they kind of know all the things about town, but it works for what he is in the story. But that's, you know, combining multiple archetypes with that.
Right. And I think, and there's also something, so like an archetype, and I've said it in my videos before. I wonder if I could say it. I don't think I could. I usually have a piece of paper in front of me when I'm reading it. An archetype is the thing which all things are similar to. Everything else is just the same thing with different details changed, right? Mm-hmm. But it's all the same thing. I recently just got a comment on one of my videos that was, aren't these all just stereotypes? And the answer is no. Well, first, define a stereotype, right? I disagree with the current consensus in the writing world that there's only a handful of archetypes. Like it's the 7 character archetypes. It's like the hero, the
jester, the lover,
the ruler, the lover. Yeah, all those. I think it's like the sage is one of them. I disagree that those are the only character archetypes because there's so many other ones, like say the bartender or the father, you know, or the parent, right? Mm-hmm. Like there are so many other things that are archetype in nature that we don't talk about. And sure, you could make an argument that those are the only ones, but they're not very practical. Mm-hmm. So if I said, well, if you have a character that is, what's another good one? Another, man, I'm totally blanking.
Use just like the hero.
Let's say just, you have the hero. They have specific plot points, specific traits that they have to fit into in order to be the hero. But if you want to have a character who's not just the hero, there's something more, then you mix it all together, right?
Right.
So, yeah, I think that the difference between stereotypes and archetypes is a stereotype is an archetype done the same way repeatedly. And I think the archetypes go beyond even characters. I think that they go into cultures, races, environments, the plot itself. There are plot archetypes out there. What's a good plot archetype? The hero slays the dragon. Mm-hmm. Knight slays the dragon. That is a story that bespokes. There is a knight who is called, goes through different challenges, finds a way to kill the dragon, fights the dragon, fails, fights the dragon again, succeeds. Like,
yeah,
that is the same story repeated.
Well, it's the same as like Luke Skywalker, Harry Potter, Kaladin, Aragorn. Like they're basically all the same character. Like there's really no major difference other than the circumstances around them. So they have different circumstances, but essentially they go through the same journey.
Yeah,
which means that you can. So what you're saying is that because we know this, you can just plug that in as a template, and then you can just use it as a guide, but adjust it for your story.
Right. You don't have to come up with it. It already all exists. These are this is the writer's toolbox, right? I know that if I want to have a love triangle, that XYZ has to happen in order for it to be a love triangle, you know?
Right.
But the difference between, say, Luke Skywalker, Kaladin, Aragorn, all of them, is that they aren't just one archetype, they're many. And so, but you can't understand the many until you understand them individually, and then when you mix them together, they make something new. So the reason that I've started with archetypes, and I'll probably stick with archetypes for a while, is because when you break it down to those simple pieces, it makes it manageable. So if I want to have a coming-of-age story, I know all the pieces I need to have for a coming-of-age story, and if I know that I want a Chosen One story along with that, I know all the pieces of a Chosen One story. And then if I want to have a, let's say, a betrayal story, I know I can combine all those together. I can take those individual plot points, I can space them out and order them the way that I need to, and then get to the details. Because I already know that these arcs, these plot archetypes are going to be a satisfying story.
Yeah.
I already know it. Now it's just coming up with the details in between. And I think that and even beyond plot, there's, adding in your world building, your civilizations, your magic items. I think I did that one last year.
Well, it's kind of like, if you have an underwater civilization, because it's underwater, it's going to have specific things that they have to have. Or if you're going to have a civilization that lives in the trees, there's the difference between Wookiees and Ewoks is not much.
No, not really at all. Yeah. And again, people would say, well, that's just a stereotype. And it's like, no, it's an archetype. Because Wookiees and Ewoks are a stereotype because they're very similar. Like, they're the same archetype done in the same way. But you could take forest civilization and then add in they worship fire, that kind of thing, or
apply it to lizards or something.
Or apply it to lizards. I think there's just more details and more ways to play with it. But yeah, that's pretty much the reason why I started with archetypes, is because I wanted to know how to build stories, and these are the pieces of stories. And if you want to build Legos, you have to have the pieces first.
Yeah, I like how you put that with calling it a writer's toolbox. I think a lot of writers, I've failed at that. I don't always think about it like putting arrows in my quiver or putting more tools in my toolbox of it's almost in a way like learning how to write stories has ruined other stories. It's like once you learn music, because I started out mostly as a musician. I didn't do writing or anything.
Right.
Once you learn music, you realize it's basically all just 4 chords.
Pretty much.
And it's all the same song. Like, every song is basically the same song. And then you're like, oh, crap, So, yeah, I like how you phrase that with being in a toolbox. And if you want to, it's like anything. You sharpen your tools and you learn about them, you acquire new tools, and then you can use those in your writing.
You get better tools, and you figure out what works best. And
so I think, sorry, one last thing. Came to me about the archetype-stereotype difference. I think an archetype is the fundamental building blocks that are always there regardless. Like, you can change the hero journey by adding other elements, but the core parts of the hero journey still have to be there, otherwise it's not the hero journey.
Right.
But a stereotype is you do the Chosen One 4 times and it's basically all the same.
Right.
Now you're doing a stereotype.
Right. Chosen One, in the Chosen One archetype, there's a prophecy, but a stereotype would be the prophecy is always coming from an orb.
Yeah. Yes. That's a great way to explain it.
Yeah. And that's the other thing is, I'm still figuring it out. I'm still, all the verbiage and the details of it all. But it's really worked for me. I don't just... oh, archetypes are a great idea. No, I actually use these. I'm currently using them for my book now, and what's great is if I know where all my characters are going, I know where my plot is going. And so now I just get to worry about the cool part, which is the cool civilizations, the cool details, how the magic works, all that stuff. But if I don't like where a character's going, then I can change it.
Yeah.
And when I change, and that's another thing is the difference between static archetypes and dynamic archetypes. So like if you're changing someone to dynamic, then they are an archetype and they're changing to another one. If they don't change to another one, then they're a static archetype. They're the same. They're the same character. Just a great example is Luke Skywalker is boy on a farm, and then he becomes coming of age, okay, and then he becomes knight in shining armor, and then he becomes mentor.
Yeah.
Right? So he becomes all of those things, and each of those things has its own like necessities. But if you change it, a static mentor has three necessities, or has a specific amount of necessities. They are those things, and they don't change.
Like Dumbledore. He never changes. He basically is who he is. Other than finding out some details of his life, he doesn't really change.
Right, and so if you know that Dumbledore is the wise mentor, then here's everything that needs to happen with the wise mentor. They need to shock and awe. They need to teach. They need to fail at teaching. That is another thing. They need to fail at teaching, and then they need to, and then secrets revealed. Right? So Yoda, great parallel with Dumbledore, is he taught, he shock and awed, right? He taught, he failed at teaching, and then deep secrets come out. He was the reason why the Jedi Order fell.
Yeah.
You know? So, yeah. Anyway, when you think about writing in the form of archetypes, at least for me, it's made it all very manageable.
Yeah.
Because I can actually know what I'm talking about, and I can know what I'm talking about with a story.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Anyway,
well, I think
that's where it came up.
That's back to your YouTube comment, too. It is interesting doing all these years of YouTube, learning a lot about how that all works. And a lot of people do think, like, I've been we've been transparent from the beginning when we first started writing Quest, before you even had Author Quest, that, like, we are not published. We don't know what we're doing. Like, the whole purpose was to show our journey, to show our writing quest. We're on a quest to write, on our quest to become an author. And so I've always maintained that. And sometimes and like for me, it's like sharing the things I learned. So I've done a lot of videos on the 3-act story structure and different plot points and stuff. And I do get some comments sometimes about people like thinking I should know more or something, and I'm like, hey, I'm just learning. Like, I'm not a published author. I've never said that I was. Like, I'm not trying to pretend that I am. I'm just trying to share things that I learned. So you might know more than I know. You might know less than I know. But that's all it is, you know?
And the other thing is, if your way of writing might not be for everyone, just archetypes are not going to be for everybody.
Right.
You know? Outlining Notion isn't going to be for everybody. You've got Notion templates that you use. Yeah.
Everyone has to find their own creative path, for sure. And as we said before, I think we said this on our last episode, about, I personally think writing is the messiest form of creativity. It's the hardest form to me because it could be anything. I mean, there's no like limits on it because you're not, film is limited to like what you can capture on camera.
Yeah.
With words, you can describe anything. So,
and it's up to the mind's eye to figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah. So we've mentioned a little bit there. We were talking about Kaladin. I have a note down here to discuss Stormlight. The Stormlight Archive.
Dude, Stormlight. Okay.
So we can't... We can't talk about it too much because I haven't read the fourth book.
I know, and it kills me that you haven't read it yet. It's okay. Stormlight. You and I both are really slow readers, right? Like,
I'm the slowest reader in all the land.
You are slower than me, which is very shocking. But it's saying something to say the least. Stormlight, dude, this structure of it all is gorgeous. I've been playing around with the idea of dissecting books, different outlines and stuff, and kind of pointing out the archetypes and that kind of thing, and pointing out where this was an alteration or this is a sub thing or that kind of stuff. It's literally, I don't know how Sanderson does it, but he has a bigger payoff every book. Yeah. And you don't think, oh, he couldn't beat that. He
couldn't possibly top that. Couldn't
possibly beat that. But he's successfully done it 4 times in a row. So I'm sold. But I just finished it, and it brings in a lot of things to perspective. But I also really love how he really slowly parses out information. He
only tells you when you need to know.
Right. And I think that is really something. So what I've been doing, in my own books right now, I've been reworking how the magic system works, because how I had it before was a little too soft, and I think that it needs to be a little bit harder. So I've been actually trying to flesh out some rules. And as I was writing about it and thinking about all this, I has started to write, when do I want to reveal? Like, what are the steps of revelation about how this all works? And I don't know when they're going to happen yet, but like, these are the steps that have to happen for everything to be revealed. And so that has been really interesting. And when I think about, because you've read the first one, spoilers for Stormlight in case no one's read it.
Spoiler warning.
Spoiler warning. So if you don't want to hear anything about Stormlight Archive, then you can click off the video now, but don't. Anyway, if you, in Stormlight 1, even just the nature of the gems, the money, the bromes, or what do they call them? Yeah. The gems or whatever. And how Stormlight works. It starts off so, like, you find out at the end of book 1 that Kaladin can draw it in.
Yeah.
And he can use it as magic.
But like,
the story of the book, though, isn't about the magic, though. It's about Kaladin growing and overcoming his shortcomings, right?
Yeah. And then you find out at the end, this whole time,
he was magic.
Accidentally accessing this magic that he didn't know that he could access.
Right.
Yeah, no, exactly. It is brilliant. It's totally brilliant.
And he really lets the story tell itself. And even because he splits it off into parts, each part is satisfying in its own way. This is a really tiny detail, but one of my favorite parts about the first 3 books is Gaz. Do you remember Gaz?
Yeah.
So he is such an insignificant character, but his arc really defines Kaladin, in my opinion. Like how Kaladin treats people and how redemptive he can kind of be. But anyway, I just really like that whole story of Gaz becoming not dumb.
So what we were saying about Kaladin with the Stormlight actually makes a point to me about archetypes. Because throughout the whole book 1, Kaladin is secretly using this magic that he had no idea he was even using it until he gets to the end.
Right.
And then you realize it's all connected. The same thing happens with Harry Potter before he finds out he's a wizard. He's accidentally using magic to escape things, and to me, that is a great version of an archetype because it's the same thing, it's the same function, done differently.
Yep.
Yeah.
And archetypes are literally everywhere. There's I truly believe that there's an infinite amount of them. It's just
finding them.
I think we limit ourselves when we try to get all literary and be like, well, there's only the 9 or the 7 or the 3, or I think that you shoot yourself in the foot. And even if it's not a true archetype, if it works for you to use it in that format, then why not use it?
Yeah. There's, to me, even if you call it a stereotype or you use stereotypes, there's really nothing wrong with using a stereotype as long as you make it your own.
Right.
Like don't
at which
directly...
point it wouldn't be... Yeah, at which point it wouldn't be a stereotype.
Yeah, don't directly rip something off, because that is a stereotype. But, yeah, like, again, it's like there's nothing new to create, really.
No.
I haven't seen anyone create anything new recently. Except maybe Rebel Moon.
Yeah, I was going to say, except maybe Rebel Moon. That might be something. Even though it's a ripoff of Star Wars, apparently. But
well, it's not a ripoff of Star Wars. It was originally pitched as a Star Wars story.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah.
So, anything else?
I think the other thing about Brandon Sanderson is it's hard. Yeah, I have to always remind myself not to compare myself to him because... 1, he is a full-time author. 2, he's a professional author. 3, he's been doing it a long time. And 4, I don't have to write at his speed of writing,
Right.
So it's just something to... But he is definitely an inspiration. That's for sure.
Oh, for sure. I think the idea that... I think I read somewhere that he writes 4,000 words a day.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's true. Let me check my calculator here quick. 4,000 words a day. And let's say conservatively he only writes 340 days a year.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So 4,000 times 340. That's 1.36 million, Brenden.
That's
words.
A lot of days to write, though. That's almost every day of the year.
But if it's true,
Right. It's so many.
It's so many.
Yeah. So, speaking of writing, where are you at with your story? How's things going?
Okay, so here's where I'm at. I'm actually really picking up in writing because I'm right before the big climax of the second act. Or kind of, I suppose I'm right about the twist. So I'm taking a lot of the pieces that I've made and I'm starting to assemble them, and I'm going to twist it right there, and then it's going to...
The game-changing midpoint?
The game-changing midpoint. So it's going to change everything. It's going to go a lot quicker after that, I think. So I would say give me another 6 months, and I should have a pretty workable rough draft.
Yeah.
I did, however, I was talking to you about my magic system and everything. I did make a fairly substantial change.
Mm-hmm.
It's not substantial. It's just a detail.
Mm-hmm.
And it might, because it has theological, medicinal, physical, cultural implications. And
right.
I don't know. Should I say it? Is there just an idea?
I don't even know what you're going to say. So you can say whatever you want.
So, fair. So I think what I want to, I'm toying around the idea of, for whatever reason in my magic world, and actually do think I have the real reason, when somebody dies, they turn to stone.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I have a very specific reason for why that needs to be, but the implications of it are, how does medicine come about? If you can't study dead bodies because they turn to stone, how does that work?
At least it limits your ability,
right? And so I think that that just speaks to what are they able to overcome in that circumstance? Do they know that they're not supposed to turn it into stone? Religious things, meaning do people honor the statues that are left behind? Do they bury them? There's just been a lot of things to kind of open it up. The reason that I brought it about is because it fixes a problem for me. But I've been going back, and I don't think it actually breaks anything that I've already written. I just need to add it in those different spots to
it doesn't
make
trip anything up, but it just needs to be integrated.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And I think that it will really... It makes it its own, I think. And so that's kind of where I'm at right now. Yeah. Writing-wise. So give me another year and a half, and I bet you all have something published. Hopefully sooner than that, but
yeah, I was we talked about this over the weekend actually, but so one of the things that's super important to me as a writer is that we're very different on the spectrum. You're more like you kind of want to just write some stories, and whatever you write, like you don't have to have it be your big epic right away.
Right.
I'm like, I only have one story to tell. It's these 13 books, and I don't have any other aspirations as of yet.
You want to write those ones?
I want to write those ones. So I'm like, if I don't publish them till I'm 60, I don't publish them till I'm 60. Like, I want to write my story, you know?
Meanwhile, I'm like, if I published in May, I'd be able to...
Yeah. So I've been... Every book in my series is in some form of outlining. It's all at a stage. Obviously, the earlier books in the series are more fleshed out. The later books just have some ideas and everything. I have a general idea of how it's all going to lay out, you know? Because I kind of look, it's 13 books, so I kind of look at it as like there's 4 trilogies. So, like, each trilogy is kind of a story, but it's obviously one narrative, but each trilogy is an arc. And then there's the first 6 are an arc, and the last 6 are an arc. But then the whole thing's an arc, right?
Right.
And then the 13th book is the book that is a little bit out of left field and kind of ties it all together. It's it makes everything make sense when you read the last book. But, so that all being said, it's very important to me that it is a very integrated, thought out from the beginning. So, like, details that happen in Chapter 1 matter in Book 13. You know, like, it's incredibly thought out. It's very cohesive that way. So it's not like I'm trying to I feel like Harry Potter, while she did outline a lot of stuff, there are some retcons. Like, you can tell, because it doesn't quite line up. Like, it kind of does, and maybe she did think about it, but to me it feels like she didn't have every detail figured out. I want to have all the details figured out. So I'm kind of going, and because of that, it kind of paralyzes me when I start writing the prose. Like, if I start getting into territory that I'm like, gosh, I don't really know how this is going to affect things. So I'm kind of going back into writing the story through my outline. And so I'm actually working on outlining the entire series, like, down to the chapter level. So, like, before I even start really writing book 1, the whole series is outlined by chapter. You know? And I might even write, like, as I'm writing book 1, I'm going to jump over and I'm going to write a chapter in book 6 because it applies. You know, like, because if I have the idea for it, I'm going to write it. You know?
Well, just because you said that, I just read a detail. So I finished Rhythm of War, and I went back to Way of Kings, to Stormlight 1, and I started reading it, and I noticed a tiny detail in Chapter 1 that linked to Rhythm of War. That I was like, how in the world? Tiniest of details that's still linked up.
Yeah, and that's what, I want people, when they read my story, to be like, wow, he really thought through this. Like, I want that to be a defining feature. But what that does is it adds a lot of pressure to write now. I have to get it right before I actually write the book.
Right.
So
I think you can do it. And you see, here's the difference. I'll be publishing, like, you know, a book every 2 years or so, book every year, 5 books a year, who knows? Mm-hmm. And then, you know, one day you'll just slam them all down.
Yeah. Well,
Done.
And then it'll be like, once I finish all of the books, then it's like I'll just publish one every 6 months until they're all gone. So, like, I'll write them for 25 years and then publish them all in 2.
Yeah.
Just like, all done.
Yep.
It's like the ultimate version of a Netflix show, basically. Like, I'm going to do this whole thing, and then I'm just going to, like, plop all 13 books down at once and be like, binge them.
Yep.
Maybe I won't, but...
I mean, you'll be working on them until they're, like, perfect anyway, so,
yeah.
knowing you. So, but anyway...
All right, well, this has been fun. Glad we talked about it. Particularly appreciate the archetypes discussion. I think that'll be really valuable for a lot of writers out there, and so... Thanks for coming on the show, and we're going to we need to try to do this more regularly, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
So make sure to go to Author Quest's YouTube channel and subscribe, and we can watch the other version. We did another video on his channel, so you can go watch that over there. And make sure to subscribe to this channel, like, comment, let us know what you think down below, and we will see you next time on Writing Quest. Huzzah!
Huzzah!